This is 2008.
No, I think I'm in 1007.
Oh.
No, this is 2008.
Wrong.
All right, y'all. Live stream is on.
This is 2008.
Yes.
Or it's between 8 or 7.
Sorry?
8 or 7.
I'm sorry?
1008 or 1007.
7.
Oh, okay.
It was. I see you made it.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Hello
Hey,
again.
man. What's up, man?
What up, what up?
You should have lunch?
Oh, I had a little bit, yeah. Just like, I got shoes.
I had have a sandwich.
Glad you're here.
Me too, man. You want to keep? Can I move this?
Yeah, I don't know. They're live streaming, so I don't really know what they want. I like to sit anyway to speech, but like,
You like to what?
since they're live streaming, I will probably stand. So let's just keep it in the middle.
Oh, the election?
Yeah.
Oh,
If you
okay.
want that.
Yeah, that's fine.
I would normally sit to speak, but if you want to stand, we can stand.
Yeah, I just didn't want to feel like there's something
No, you're good.
in between us.
It might be live now.
Huh?
Yeah, I think it's live right now.
Oh, it's live? Oh, okay. You got a speech up, or I can make one.
Either or is up to you. Pretty cool that there's only, out of all the quarters, it's only 2 UNLV and all Sac State. It's quite nice.
It is what it is, you know. But I'm glad you guys broke. Right? Yeah. I mean, I'm glad I broke too, because that was rough.
Yeah, this should be
I didn't
fun.
know how it's gonna turn out, because I know you guys are good, you know. Yeah, so. Okay.
Doctor. Gonna have fun? Gonna have fun? So much fun. You got water, you gotta get hydrated. I have my food. And then I will very nice.
Oh, that would be.
See you later, Doctor. All right.
Whenever you're ready.
Or there's still too much credits.
Oh, okay.
Are you gonna be okay with speed?
Yeah.
Sweet.
Just be sure to pronunciate your words.
Okay.
Hello. Where was it?
Really wherever it's convenient and out of the way.
Oh, so they meet again.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they want live stream. I don't know if they want us talking to a mic. Do you guys have any idea?
Mike's in the seat,
Oh, cool. So okay, cool.
Like this, really?
Cool.
and we're live.
Looks like a smart room, classroom.
Wait,
Yeah.
what's in the ceiling?
Mike.
Oh,
Where
This is
Michael?
live stream right now.
oh, from that thing right there.
Camera and mics are maybe that thing.
Oh, well, in that case, welcome everyone.
Hello.
Sorry, if I could just have one moment. It's reconnecting me back to SAP Link. Apparently, 2 years after you graduate, Ed Jerome says no more. Just sad.
Yeah, you pay thousands of dollars to go here and they say, yeah, you can't have the Wi-Fi anymore.
Or free parking.
They're like,
The
good luck
parking.
accessing those emails.
You need a few more $1,000 to get it again.
Walk behind a paywall.
All right. Is everyone on the speech drop?
Oh, I'm having
I'm good. You
I'm good, yeah.
You're good? Okay. We're all good?
Is it uploaded?
Hold on. Speech drop's being 1 second. It should be up now. All right, everyone got it?
No, give me one moment.
You're good.
It is still opening.
Both of you ready?
All right, everyone good?
Yeah.
All right, then I will start now. Ban private spending. Observation 1 is enhanced. Public financing for presidential campaigns exists, but nobody uses it. Smith 22. The Federal Election Campaign Act provided public funding for elections for presidential campaigns for 6 election cycles from 76 to 96. Public financing worked well. Availability of public funds and public financing were encouraged. Transparency in campaign funding and sharply reduced the influence of wealthy donors. Since 2008, no presidential candidate has used the system at all, and today more than $300 million of public funds for campaigns sits unused because candidates refuse to accept the spending limits required to qualify for the public funds. Thus, the plan: the U.S. federal government should ban private spending in presidential campaigns. The solvency: a restriction on private campaign spending forces public financing to be the only option. 80-20-20. The most obvious solution to our campaign finance problems is to follow the example of other democracies: limit campaign spending, ban outside spending, and require public funding. All of which we know can lessen the undue influence on wealthy interests on elections. Reform groups have proposed a constitutional amendment that would allow greater restrictions on campaign spending and overturn the court's rulings in banning such laws. Such amendments would have a huge breakthrough and pave the way to adopt new laws and rein in outside spending to provide for public financing. Full public financing is still the gold standard for getting money out of elections. Thus, observation 1 in democracy. Private spending dismantles democracy through the chilling effect on voters. Up to 2012. Poll finds that an outside spending on super PACs has given rise to significant bipartisan fears of corruption and distrust in the government. 1 in 4 Americans are less likely to vote this year due to the fear that candidates will cater to the interests of super PAC donors over the public interest. Less wealthy, less educated Americans were significantly more likely to say that they will not vote because of super PACs. 41% of those respondents believe that their vote doesn't matter to begin with. Next, only 1 in 5 Americans agree that the average voter has the same access to candidates as big donors do with super PACs. Then 2 out of 3 Americans say that their trust in government is less due to big donors and super PACs have more financial influence on than regular voters. Next, American democracy can't survive the current campaign finance framework. 80-20-20. For election to be fully democratic, several conditions must hold. Citizens must have an equal amount of power to decide who is elected. Second, democratic elections must also be fair races. American elections fail to fulfill both these criteria because the problem is the way they are financed. The pivotal role private money plays in elections means that some people have a lot more power to determine who wins and that other candidates have unfair advantages. This is not to say that the candidate who has the most money will always win, but more money does give candidates a significant edge. Thus, public campaign funding is key to democracy. Multiple warrants for fall 18. It reduces the number of uncontested elections and tends to narrow the incumbents' margin of victory. More contested elections, more close races, and fewer landslide re-elections help keep incumbents accountable for their constituents. It reduces the amount of time and effort candidates need to devote to fundraising and enables them to focus more on direct interaction with voters. And in matching fund jurisdictions, fundraising can make it to be compliant, especially in smaller legislative districts, with candidates simultaneously seeking matching donations and votes. Small donor matching tax credit rebate programs make small private donations more valuable to candidates and broaden participation in campaign finance reform. By replacing private contributions with full public funds, the funding programs necessarily reduce the large role of donations in financing elections. Arguments that clean election laws led to enactment of prescription drug price control, bottle deposit reform law, and respectively in those states, a range of other reforms. For example, in Connecticut, we saw including college tuition assistance for undocumented immigrants, a transgender rights bill, and paid sick leave mandate. It's all been attributed to clean election laws. Next, democracy is key to solving multiple impacts. Economic growth, public goods, and alliances, key and reward. The U.S. is key. Democracy promotion serves a key role in growth. Investing in public goods are more politically stable and more dependable allies, and empirically, we do not go to war. Democracies tend to have better mechanisms for protecting private property, and this makes democracies attractive to investors. Encourage entrepreneurship and small business development is key to growing the economy. Democracies lead to be wealthy and more economically stable. Countries less likely to go to war. Democracy and invest in public goods at higher rates than autocratic governments. Innovation around the world improves global quality of life. Between countries, democracies are better than regular election cycles and ensure an established process. Politically stable makes democracies better international partners and more dependable in other states. Democracies do not go to war with one another. Public constrains leaders' ability to wage war, easier to credibility and communicate, resolve, more wealthy and more economically interdependent. The world of democracies is inherently safer. Next, second advantage, APAC. Private donors' influence on the presidency and their agenda, losing them risks future election losses. Gold Measure 21. Biden developed a certain way of thinking for his donors, thanking his donors who invested in his presidential campaign. He promised to, quote, never ever let you down. Biden's most loyal contributors and top fundraisers are feeling neglected, not outright cast aside, and wealthy and entitled contributors want to find ways to have more influence than they already have, which is a growing source of concern that could cause the party to mobilize and backlash. Donors scored some prominent postings in Mr. Biden's administration, including 2 ambassadorships last week. A hedge fund executive and top Democratic donors has communicated that he's pausing his political giving these deals until voting rights legislation advances. Some party officials worry that the neglect for these early funders could hamper fundraising. IPAC influences election in private donors. IPAC's announcement that it would launch a super PAC sent shockwaves through the foreign policy communities, and now that this package raised over $27 million running ads, it is clear that the spending strategy is to raise money and run ads to benefit Democratic candidates who won't question U.S. policy towards Israel. IPAC defended its position to endorse a single-issue organization. Next, IPAC advises U.S. politicians to disregard Iran as a regional power, pushing Iran to proliferate and the U.S. to initiate conflict at war. By January 31st, IPAC implies that the reason for Iran's nuclear progress is not that the U.S. sheathed this sword. IPAC's ends its Iran memo, which declared that it is vital to restore Iran's fear, and the letter proposed that the U.S. should immediately begin to act forcefully against other Iranian outrages. IPAC is pushing Biden and the administration down the path that Trump already took. During his campaign of maximum pressure, the Trump administration launched a small attack against Iran that threatened larger ones. Iran responded again and again by speeding up to nuclear progress. After Texas shot down a drone, Trump threatened that any attack by Iran would be met with on America would be met with obliteration. The following month, Texas announced that it breaches restrictions on uranium, and in 2020, Trump assassinated Soleimani. Texas replied by saying 3 weeks later, we now possess 6 times as much enriched uranium as before. This pattern continues a vicious cycle over and over. The U.S. and Israeli attacks threatens war and have accelerated to the very nuclear progress that IPAC and its allies now cite as evidence why the U.S. needs to escalate even more. IPAC considers U.S. region power so moral that it urges Biden to threaten and attack Iran without even discussing what would happen afterwards. That conflict with Iran means extinction. Iran's been conducting its own war and Iran's military is in a state of readiness. Well, their weapons aren't as advanced, they could quickly inflict substantial losses. Iranian troops could cross the border into Iraq and Afghanistan, and in turn, a military escalation will happen. We can go to nuclear weapons, and in worst case scenarios, we go to World War III.
You ready for prospects?
Yes, sir.
Sorry, prospects. So do you know what kind of private spending, what kind of public funding you're trying to go after?
Yeah, we're specifically saying the money that's given to presidential candidates to run their campaigns.
But what sort exactly? Because there's like matching funds, there's
Yeah,
tax
we're saying we should
incentives.
ban all private spending for presidential campaigns.
Okay, but you don't quite know exactly what sort of public funding you're gonna establish in place of
We're not
that.
actually establishing any public funding. What we're saying is when we ban private, we leave the public financing for presidential campaigns that already exist as the only option.
Okay. So your plan, let's go through your plan. Your plan, it says it wants to ban private spending, right?
Yeah.
And private spending is just, includes any nonprofit or anyone contributing to any sort of public office candidate through their own money, not public funding, right?
So what we're saying is we want to remove any
But yeah,
outside
what
spending
is private spending?
Any outside spending for
Okay.
presidential campaigns. The only funding that will be left under the plan is the public financing that already exists now.
And let's talk about your advantage of democracy here.
Yeah.
How long has it been since you checked the source here?
For which one?
I mean,
How long has it been since they checked?
like,
the
are
source?
you talking about modern democracy or
Yeah, we're talking about what's happening now. Like, there's a bunch of issues with
what's happening
democracy.
now? Right? Yeah.
We all know, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, we're talking about issues that are happening now. For example, we saw in 2018 where 65% of people said they didn't want to vote because of super PACs. During that election cycle, at the time when Trump was raising funds, they were like, hey, a lot of these people are getting a lot of money from super PACs. My vote doesn't matter. Like, who cares what I'm doing when these big
So you say public
companies
funding
are making money?
is going to be good for democracy overall? Is what your advantage is saying?
So if you look at the default 18 card,
Yeah.
there's 3 main points to it. First, it narrows incumbents' margins of victory with uncontested elections. And 2, one of the bigger ones that I think is it reduces time candidates have to go for fundraising. It allows us to interact with individual voters. So for example, let's say Pete Buttigieg, right, some politician, he wants to raise money. Rather than going and trying to get votes from big super PACs that are going to help influence him, he can go to the individual where he has more time where he can go meet people like me and you.
Okay, so it's just a matter of him finding time to meet people.
It reduces time and effort candidates need to devote to fundraising and enables them to focus on direct interactions.
I'll take that then. I had a minute 25 left. Are you ready? So roadmap, I'm gonna start with the on case and then 2 off.
So it's on case and then 2 off.
7 minutes to me. Yeah. And starting now. So let's start with their plan. The plan says they want to restrict private spending specifically, but their advantage 2 talks about private spending itself. So their advantage 2 is not even an advantage because it contradicts the plan. Because they're asking APAC to spend private funding, which involves local ads and to influence the U.S. So their advantage 2 is not even an advantage. You can just throw that out, Judge. Occasionally, the increase in campaign finance has diversified the ballot, expanded free speech, and benefit democracy or reforms, raise citizenship, and reduce political participation. Blackburn 20. New voices in the political arena since the decision undeniable. It seems highly likely that powerful money interests were putting their finger on the scale with elections to a degree. Post-Decision, these are the outcomes they would have sought. Supporters of the Decision regarded as going to democracy by allowing political outsiders to more easily challenge the incumbent and status quo. While right-to-wise bought a lot of ads that failed to convince voters who passed supporting newcomers have had better success. Independent USA PAC and women vote 5 election cycles since Senate United saw an average of 79 freshman members of Congress. 5 cycles prior to the Senate saw just 5.5. Legalizing corporate union independent expenditures and paving the way for surpass Senate United open up a new and useful avenues for speech. Americans are speaking out more than ever before. Campaign spending is up as candidates and independent groups attempt to persuade voters through the airwaves and over the internet. It is also true in human terms challenges and newcomers have found highly persuasive ways to speak, to catch up and compete with both incumbent and politicians, established political brokers. Research shows that all of this speech make voters more informed and more engaged. In the United has resulted in a flood of corporate cash running out owning voices that has allowed new important voices to be heard. The decision not only protects the right to speak, but it protects the right of Americans to hear those voices. Citizens rather than government decide what arguments are worthwhile. Citizens United is one of the most important decisions of the century for protecting, fostering, and benefiting democracy. So on to T. Enter the act must mandate an increase of restriction by the United States federal government political campaigns in defense because of the term. That is conjunction means that the resolution is a subordinate clause defining the scope of political campaign policy that further must only increase restriction on political campaigns. Let's go 19. Conjunction introducing a subordinate clause expressing a statement of hypothesis violation. The act gains advantage from mandates not included in the resolution. 2. The plan increase of political campaigns are not included by the resolution. Standards. Predictable ground. Our interpretation is most predictable because it's the most grammatical correct interpretation of the topic and doesn't allow anything that isn't specified in the wording of the topic to be considered topical. Voters. T is voted for the reason articulated above in the NFA-LD rules. Prefer rules-based theory because the rules explicitly and concretely tell us what we can and can't run. Non-rules-based theory is entirely unpredictable, making it impossible for negatives to prepare for and engage successfully in the debate. Also, this ad. Investors have already forecast political spending in local media markets. Growth and stability are projected in 2022. The U.S. broadcast industry is expected to reach $36 billion in total advertising revenue in 2022. The local ad market has been stronger than the national side of the spot ads business. TV station ad revenue is expected to return to pre-pandemic levels and growth during the period is projected. The spot ad market for TV is more volatile political ad spending in election years. Political advertising will be spent disproportionately on local TV stations in swing state markets. Spending in the midterm election is up 50% from the last midterm. 5-year forecast for the TV stations take into account fluctuation between election and non-election years and cost for $3 billion in the next presidential election. Radio as a predominantly local and were heavily impacted by advertising pullback in 2021. Radio, of course, local ad spot market is projected to grow. Radio's low ads, local audience, and high return on investment keep it relevant. Next. Campaign finance reform and disclosure requirements are creating a chilling effect on political advertising. The King Feingold is a precedent. Canelo Rahar 14. One would engage the growing spending advantage that outside groups enjoy with political parties is to look at broadcast advertisements. The number of advertisements that party sponsor has fallen precipitously. In 2020, the parties aired 2/3 of all advertisement. In post-reform, 2004, that figure dropped to 1/3. In 2012, just 6% of all advertising was supported by political parties. As a consequence, suppose national companies have trophies to the point where they are no longer able to exercise core functions. The parties are becoming dependent on outside groups that operate with little or no disclosure and narrow political agendas. Next. The local media advertising market is on the brink. The entire market is being propped up by holiday and election spending. Berge 22. Political holiday media planning are creating a huge wave of media spending for the end of the year. Political advertising cuts to a little portion of holiday related planning and buying. Midterm political money has gobbled up inventory across digital and local media platforms, connected TV and streaming, attracting advertisers who have historically spent in traditional media such as radio and local print. There's more political money funding the market, a holiday tsunami. Traditionally, heavy advertisers have other places to spend their money. Traditional local media are struggling to get non-political dollars because digital seems to have sucked away so much. Effects aren't being felt at national level since no presidential election at stake. The more relevant variable on holiday spending this year is economy-driven cutbacks. Onto impacts. Local media is responsible for antimicrobial resistance campaigns. Local news, radio, and print are the most trusted they reach the most demographics. Camera 13. Successful communication strategies depend on both the content and the message and its delivery mechanism. Information must come from informed and trusted sources. Experience from other areas show that local newspaper, local radio, and the website are trusted more than national media. The public also more likely to take messages from local media and go directly to the department or go directly to the Department of Health or NHS websites to be consulted for further information. The U.S. community resilience campaigns can convey messages to large numbers of people and to most demographic groups. Engaging media and AMR campaigns may tend towards alarmist or negative stories. If engaged properly, the media can be used to good effect. While negative mainstream media impressions can be reversed, just like drug-resistant micros, media and communication strategies constantly adapt and evolve. Any communication campaign, whether it involves traditional or new media, depends on trust and empathy. The message must come from a trusted source, be believable, reliable, and verifiable. And finally, antimicrobial resistance fruit bugs are an essential threat and risk extinction. This outweighs in turns case. You can cross-multiply this to the framing in the F. Now it's crucial we cannot wait acting against root bugs before impact Victor 20. The catastrophic human tendency to properly acknowledge those are terribly much greater resistance threats that seems the risk and extinction surrounding antibiotic resistance are most completely unacknowledged, incredibly dangerous and subject to change without only slight cultural and industrial shifts. The UN claims that by 2050, 10 million people will die every year from antibiotic resistant disease. Humans only use 20% antibiotics manufactured. The rest are consumed constantly by animals waiting for slaughter. Our food systems predication on the constant use of antibiotics for animal use is a risk with disaster. To mitigate the fallout from catastrophe right around the corner, we shouldn't just trust our natural tendencies to just deal with it later. I'm going to add another card, a Psalm seeker. Terminal no Psalm. As the proposal continues, conflict campaign finance law with the donors can and will influence the fortune loss no matter less than enforced. Basket 14. So they simply worry that the amount of money being spent in unnecessary email scene wouldn't be better spent on almost any other activity. Regardless of what motivates this campaign, finance reform coming in various incarnation across various levels of government over the years has been almost uniformly a failure. The best interpretation is that campaign finance has been hopelessly complicated. Any semblance of transparency is gone. If you want to know who is supporting candidates today, that question is largely unanswerable. Donors are paying close attention to the laws to figure out how to get money to the campaigns that need them without running afoul authorities. Donors still want to get money and candidates still want to spend it. So they'll find out a way to get the money to where they want it to go. I'll upload
Is anyone not ready?
do you want that document? Or?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, you can just go.
Okay, so we talk a lot about this side about like local media struggling, right? So how did local media get money when public financing was the only used option up until 2008? So if like the threat of them losing all their money is so big, why were they able to do it before 2008?
Well, if you look at my local media site, it does say that it has been declining through political participation. But so they're more heavily dependent on, even though it's forecasted to go up, it's also been a decline. So
okay, so if we talk about this whole concept where they get a lot of their money from these political ads,
right.
How do they survive when it's specifically in this case we talk about presidential elections, right, which happen every 4 years? Let's say, like, let's be conservative and say they get a full year of political campaigning, right? How do they survive for the other 3 years?
Well, I mean, there's such thing as holiday spending, as we've mentioned, and it comes in such a large amount that I would assume that everything runs on a budget.
So how many people? So how many people consume local media as opposed to big mainstream media for their news? Especially in the way your cards talk about, like radio and like papers.
Well, my ad is saying that local media is the mainstream news for local people. Mainstream news is only something that it's there, but everyone gets their information from local media.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if in the worst case scenario, local media goes away, other places to get media exist, right? So my question is, if there is a big issue, an epidemic, almost like with these like super bugs you're talking about, does nobody inform anybody? And is there other forms of local media that have since popped up that don't rely on ad revenue?
Well, it's not the fact that, my local media says only 20% of people use the vaccines anyway. So it's the fact that, even with the status quo, it's hard. So if you cut off funding to local media, it's gonna be even harder to spread the news that, antimicrobial resistant disease are real and it's a real extinction, and we're trying to spread awareness. That's the whole point is that
So if it's really
we
that
need more
bad-
reasons to
Yeah, so if it's
articulate
that
this.
bad and we're talking about these like major impact scenarios where a lot of people die, why can't we look at it something like what happened with COVID, where local media covered it, but everybody covered it, not just local, like TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all the main, like CNN, Fox, all of them.
I mean, that's another form of, but where do they get their information from? Before they covered it, they had to educate themselves from the local media. It's not like you're at home and you all of a sudden you knew that,
Last thing.
COVID is spreading,
So
Yeah.
so can you reply again, like,
Yeah.
why can't you reply to APAC?
Because your plan is saying that you're banning private funding, and then your advantage is is involving private spending from APAC to the US, to the Biden administration. It's just, to me, that's just a contradiction.
I got it.
Yeah, because you're asking for private spending when you're banning private spending, And that's just not an advantage to you. That contradicts your whole plan.
We misunderstood the app, but okay.
But I mean, the app,
Okay, cross-X is done.
The Masket 14 card is the card you added at the end, right?
yes. Okay. Does that count? I'll stay within my time frame, right?
Yeah. You agree.
All right, I'm sorry, I have preference.
I also uploaded a cleaner doc, if that helps you guys. All right, I have 110 left. I'm not gonna add a new doc.
The order is going to be really quick on T, and then, T, disads, kicks. All right, anybody not ready? Okay, really fast on the T. The plan is not actually topical because they do not specify which part of the plan is on topical. They actually there are multiple elements to the plan, but we only defend one plan action and its impacts. It is not effectually topical as the link chain is predictable and we have proven it on our standards. Let's look at the actual wording of the resolution. Resolve: the United States federal government should substantially increase restrictions on political campaigns for public office in one of the more following areas: communication, campaign spending, or interest groups. We specifically picked the campaign spending section. We're saying we ban all presidential spending. That is completely within our topic, excuse me. We only defend one plan, and it is within our link chain that is predictable, and we have it on the limit. Now, I want to start talking about this disad. This whole disad functions on the idea that local media can be saved, but we talked about it in cross-text. Local media is already A, dying. Only 20% of people are actually consuming it. B, there is no talk about in this on how new media forms actually spread information. We look at a lot of people use local media like TikTok or Twitter, or even when you start looking at people who still use TV, they often go to things like Fox or CNN, where we see that more than 20% of people are there. Now, we have a big fear-mongering tactic in this disad talking about how antimicrobial resistant superbugs are an existential risk and threat to extinction. Now, if we really had these big of issues, a lot more people other than local media are going to cover it. If local media was the one covering all of it, that would be a big problem. You look at COVID-19. Everybody was covering it. Governments got involved, especially if local media is that invested. Local governments will turn on local media. We talked about this whole argument on, hey, why, if it is such a big risk, why since 2008 did local media not go down? There's no real response there. They're saying, hey, local media has been struggling and is continuing to struggle. Okay, but it hasn't died. They run ads on holiday spending all year round. If holiday spending also brings up enough money that they can survive 3 years before the political ads go on, there's no reason they can't just grab that 4th year of holiday spending and use that. That's one of the biggest things in today's debate because it's not going to fall apart without these political ad spendings. Not to mention, that's not saying in our case that political ad spending doesn't happen to begin with. When we talk about the idea of how people raise ads, a lot of the more successful smaller campaigns happen on platforms like TikTok and happen on platforms where other people have access to media. Now, we never said we ban political ads. When you look at public financing, people can still spend that money on ads if they want to. Now, that's a big thing because we're not saying we're getting rid of the money. Now, I want to start going on case and we're going to start cross-applying some things. First, I really think we need to look at the second advantage because my opponent only said that it's contradictory to the case because we're asking for private spending. That's not what the IPAC advantage is saying. Basically, what IPAC is saying is the IPAC Super PAC raised money. They now funnel that money into things like the Biden campaign and say, hey, right now Iran is scaring us. You should do something about it. Now that's a problem because when you start to look at the implications of going to war with Iran, a lot of bad things happen. And this isn't just some fear-mongering tactic. We have seen it for the past multiple years where there is a clear escalation. When you saw Trump's position of maximum pressure, it started with something simple. We shot down a drone. Next thing you know, we assassinated somebody. And then 3 weeks after that, they are now possessing 6 times the amount of uranium that they did before. This escalation is happening very quickly, and we should just err on the side of caution and not do this. So that's why we have to look at the IPAC advantage. Because if this is just one scenario where IPAC does something, it's causing a problem. And we are continuing to ramp up the issues that are going on. So IPAC has had zero pushback on the entire advantage at all, and therefore it automatically goes through. Because if you look at the impacts, we could all die. This isn't just some scare tactic of a super bug that could happen and nobody's going to report the super bug. This is, hey, there is evidence that people are dying and the escalation is happening. Now, let's start to look at the democracy advantage. My opponent doesn't really talk about it at all in their on-case section. They talk about case turn, the increase in campaign financing has diversified the ballot for free speech and benefited democracy overall. Reform risks censorship and political communication participation. But there is no talk about how the public financing works. They just talk about circumvention, that there's no solvency. The asked proposal continues to complicate campaign finance law, where wealthy donors can influence elections. Laws don't matter unless they're enforced. Exactly. Wealthy donors influence elections. That's the whole problem. That's what the app is trying to solve. We're saying that no longer should wealthy donors be able to funnel money into campaigns to help boost them. We talked about just because they have more money doesn't mean they always win, but there is a significant edge when you have more capital over others. Not just to mention, you are systematically hurting upward mobility of other individuals who are trying to get up and get to campaigning. For example, if a college poli-sci major just graduated and they want to start running for public office, they're going to have a lot harder time raising money than somebody who's already established. With campaign financing that's public, anybody who can prove that, hey, we're running a legitimate campaign, we're starting something, they'll get a little bit of money. And as you grow, you get more money. And that's how the system is supposed to work. That allows everybody to get involved in politics. Now, when we cross-apply these impacts and these ideals with the negative, we see that, one, the topicality argument, there is no extra topicality because our plan defends one specific action. There's no effectual topicality. When we look at the dissat, it's a lot of fear-mongering and unrealistic, saying that local media will die. Because when we ask, hey, why didn't it die in 2008? There was no answer. And there is alternatives to local media. They say they get holiday funding. Okay, if they get holiday funding helps them that much, then why is it that big of a deal if election financing goes away? Because guess what? People are still going to run ads anyway. Advertisements are always running. There is no actual talk by the NEG on how ads run, how much money they generate, as opposed to political ads. They're very, very similar. Ads always will be running. And for those reasons, that the impacts have not been touched on the app, and they are much, much graver, you vote for the affirmative.
I have minute 25. I'm gonna put my doc. I'm going to touch on solvency real quick, and then we're going to go to the set.
Solvency being.
Yeah.
Okay.
So first on solvency, I want to extend my Blackburn 20 card that says that democracy is good. The app did not touch on my Blackburn 20 card. Democracy is good. It's allowed people to have more free speech. It's allowed them to incorporate more voices into the political campaign system. And the app even says money doesn't matter. Money doesn't matter, then your plan fails. Money doesn't actually, and your plan says that, right? Money doesn't really matter if candidates win or not. So your public fund plan fails because money still contributes anyways. So onto this ad. You've mishandled this ad. It's child die for the status quo. Any risk of the link means you'll be voting negative on your ballot. They have to win a late turn and they have not done so. We are controlling that. The plan was essentially chill political advertising spending in local media markets. Disregard any current market projections, political spending, and cash are already 10 years outlook for the local media companies. This uniquely affects newsprint and radio, which have isolated a crucial to premium impacts which turn to outweigh the app. This means that you vote neg. 2, preference extinction. Any risk of extinction outweighs destruction of all future population in the is the biggest impact in the round, also in 13. What makes existential catastrophe especially bad is that will destroy the future. We must consider how much value that will come to exist in the absence. It turns out that the ultimate potential for originating intelligence is literally astronomical. Even if we use the most conservative of these estimates, which totally ignores the possibility of space colonization in software minds, we find that the expected loss of the existential catastrophe is greater than the value of 10 to 16 human lives. The expected value of reducing existential risk by 1 millionth of 1% point is at least 100 times the value of 100 million lives. The expected value of reducing existential risk by 1 billionth of 1% point is worth 100 billion times as much as a billion human lives. The absolute value of the indirect effect of saving 1 billion lives of the total cumulative amount of existential risk is almost certainly larger than the positive value of the direct benefit of such an action. Onto uniqueness. Instead, unique advertisers and investors have already calculated political spending for the next 5 years. Political spending is a key part of the return to pre-pandemic levels of TV revenue. The market is expecting a huge influx in 2024 from the U.S. presidential campaign, meaning that the status quo will continue to march towards a bolstered and well-funded local media market outlook based primarily on political spending and advertising for special interest groups. Local media markets are on the breakdown. The uniqueness we are controlling on the internal link level, the narrow trajectory that markets are walking using calculations based on even non-even election year analysis is 10 years, and any market fluctuation risk investments, the status quo is a flowing PIC to 1AC. Onto the link. Instead of the link, the link story is simple. Our current evidence indicates two things. First, the last major set of restriction on campaign and elections results in an immediate and progressive reduction in the campaign spending and political communication. Second, this shifted the entire spectrum of political advertising investments to drug money special interest donors. This shows a precedent for political advertising spending after actions like 1AC. We have isolated how important this spending is to an important industry already on the brink. That absolutely risks the current status quo, absolutely any risk of the link, and you vote neg. Onto internal link. Instead of the internal link, the Berge evidence indicates a couple things. First, the local market's bounce back is due to unique circumstances where this boom in political advertising dollars is happening across local formats because so much traditional advertising has gone digital, meaning that there's plenty of pie and plenty of pieces to go around that is 10 years. Once the holidays end and that passes, both legs underneath local market players will be yanked out from under the investors and sellers. The only real money in local news, print, and radio is political spending. Okay, let's skip the last part. On to the impact. They say no. Let's move down. Same one below. They say no impact. Super bugs don't cause extinction. First, you prefer our evidence on solvency. Additionally, you can cross-apply the internals from Victor 20 that says the attitude towards super bugs is exactly what threatens our extinction. This is a risk scenario, meaning that the defense of super bugs isn't enough to win this page. The UN predicts billions of lives are at stake in the world of 1AC. Antibiotics is existential threat. It's nonlinear and its 10 points irreversible. Pharmaceutical development does not check back. Only the world of the neg has the local education campaigns necessary. Serum 16. AMR is responsible for 700,000 global deaths each year. AMR could cause 10 million deaths each year by 2050 with knock-on effects draining $1 trillion from global economy. AMR represents existential threats to life on Earth. AMR seems like a quintessential nonlinear phenomenon. Year by year, the effects are small and most invisible, but at some point they could suddenly become catastrophic. The 10 point is not predictable. Why don't companies invest in new antibiotics? It does not pay markets, don't reward. It does not pay markets, don't reward preparation for disaster. Even the company successful develop a new option. Pressure would force the company to price the drug below the market. And finally, low quality and counterfeit pharmaceuticals make AMR spread globally. They increase microbial, contagious, and unaffected drug, increase incubation periods, preventing burnout. Calicitis 15. Substandard antimicrobial medicines promote antimicrobial resistance. Use of standard products may lead to underdosing, which can increase antimicrobial resistance. Travel promote the spread worldwide. Therapeutic failure prolongs the period of contagion and increase the prevalence of infections. Low quality antimicrobials significantly decrease confidence in antibiotics, lead physicians to lose confidence. Public confidence in healthcare and in government may decline significantly. If patients do not take antimicrobials due to lack of trust, they remain infectious. So, Judge, that's why you'll be voting for the neg today, because my impact clearly outweighs the affirmative's plan. The affirmative haven't proven that they can solve. Their plan contradicts itself in so many ways. They're saying money doesn't matter, but then we want to ban private funding, and their advantage is even ask for local media ad market. Their advantage too is asking for that. APAC is going to run local ads too, so their whole plan is based on our plan, anyways. And by the NFC rules, the negative only has to win with a disadvantage, which I have won clearly that my impact of millions of deaths has outweighed the impact of possible nuclear war.
Okay, is anybody not ready? Alrighty, so we're gonna go disad on case. Alright, let's begin. So, saying we will allow elections to be rigged in order to prevent fear of superbugs and microbial diseases is a gross mishandling of American democracy. If we agree that democracy is good, then we should work to a world to fix it and make it better. There is zero reason media can't and won't find other ways to survive without political ads, especially when my opponent says they get a lot of their funding from holiday spending to begin with. And two, if it is that bad, then why is it that in 2008 and before, they were able to survive without the political ads being run? Now, even if you do buy that, nowhere in the AF case do we say we ban political ads. What we do is we ban private spending for those ads. If the candidates want to use their money and put the ads on it when they receive it publicly, that's a good thing. You allow them to do that. But where you fail is saying that we should get it privately. There is no reason the negative dis ads actually trigger, especially when we look at the impacts. My opponent said exactly what I agree with. Quote, prefer extinction, that we're in try or die. Yes, the app extinction. Let's move on case. One, APAC is material. It's feasible and tangible. We see it happening. There is zero on-case arguments this entire debate for the against the app. APAC, superbugs, we can see in small quantities, yes, but they are not as material as watching Iran update their nuclear weapons and enrich 6 times uranium that they said they were going to breach their contracts with in 3 weeks. There is a clear escalation here. And when you prefer extinction, look at the ones that are feasible, especially when you look at the gross mishandlings on the negative side when talking about the disad. We say that the NFA rules say even if you win one disad, that the negative wins the debate, but that's not true, because when you look at the multiple different examples, the disad won't actually happen. We see that media has survived. COVID helped media survive. You see it all the time, especially by saying that if local media goes away, superbugs happen, there is no reason that other forms of media don't inform the public, especially when local media, as my opponent said in their card, only uses 20% of the population. When you look at the other 80% and the other media they consume, that's going to inform everybody just as dangerously with the superbugs that my opponent talks about. So, overall on the voters, one is extinction. APAC is tangible and feasible, when superbugs are not necessarily that case. And two, based on the on-case arguments made, you see that there is no reason that we should not vote for the affirmative. Because if one person doesn't die and one person benefits, that is far greater than the risk that destroying democracy does in the negative world. That's good.
2 times a day.
Yeah.
Can I get each of your name?
Dylan.
George. I was the negative. Just.
I'm just gonna kill the stream. You know, I'm gonna have to RFT on the internet.
You don't want it there forever?
Thanks for watching, everybody.
How many people watching?
I think you had somewhere in the range of 2,000 to 3,000 folks.
Really?
Wow.
No,
Oh, wow.
no.
I was like, wait.